This is Ray from R&R Golf in Quincy, Illinois, and today we're going to show you the brand new shoes from New Balance for 2014. These are tennis shoes for men, 2-year waterproof and everything. This is a great looking model. This sells for $119.99, and this is also a white model that we sell for $99.99. Very comfortable shoes, easy to walk in, and they're rarely available. Brand new on the market since last week.
Good evening. Our budget on page 63. The proposed budget for the Quincy Police Department is $10,894,634. This is a 0. Find it. 63 is the that's okay. This is a 0.67% increase of $72,886. Our budget is 93.39% personnel cost, and I include MICA costs in that figure. This budget supports the current staffing that we have in the current fiscal year of 75 sworn officers and 12 civilian employees. In the current year, we had budgeted for 76 officers and 2 animal control officers. This proposed budget does not have the 76th officer or the second ACO in it. It's just the 75 sworn and 12 civilians. We did add $20,000 contract for cat trapping, and we can come back to that in a little bit to talk about how that might work. Looking at our personnel costs, they alone are $10,174,279. That's a 1.15% increase. Salaries actually decreased by 2.41%. That's mainly due to removing those 2 positions from this year's budget that we didn't do last year. Involved in those salaries, the salary number is a 20-cent increase for the machinist employees, a 2% increase for PBPA employees, 0% for non-union. Our benefits increased 8.23%, mainly a 12% increase in group insurance and a 10.37% increase in police pension. And speaking of the pension, just looking at that alone, that increase alone is $172,354. If you were to separate the police pension out from the current year and from the proposed year budgets, our budget would actually be a decrease of $99,468,000. That kind of puts that in perspective of what's driving our increase, our small increase in this year's budget. It's pension and group insurance. Our other costs, besides personnel, have decreased 5.64% for $43,000. That would include animal shelter contract, medical exams, legal services, training costs, consumable equipment, safety supplies, training supplies. I know some of you look at the current year projected budget, and we always seem to have a considerable amount of money that's not spent. This year it's larger than usual. There's several reasons that drive this. First of all, this one's larger than usual because we did not hire the 76th police officer, and we did not hire the second ACO. There was also a reduction in the number of auxiliary officers. There is was some over budgeting in some areas, which I'll talk about here real quick. And then also there's an unplanned slowdown in spending and training costs that we started early this year. That there was this money that we planned to spend, we did not spend because of that reason. I reviewed for the projected budget, when I put it together, I reviewed and compared the last 5 years' budgets to identify where we have consistently underspent. And that result of that is cutting nearly $200,000 in comparing these budgets. Some of the personnel areas that were cut include patrol salary, for example, where we cut $119,857. The reason this number gets inflated over years is if you don't figure the budget each year, month by month, the longevity bumps that officers get at different times during the year, actually, if you don't do it month by month, you do it just on an average year, it grows each year. And so this year, we, with the help of the Comptroller's office, we did a month-by-month raise on that to actually determine the true increase that we would need. And that was actually a decrease, and we were able to cut $119,000, almost $120,000 out of that. Similarly, administrative civilian group insurance, we cut nearly $20,000 from that line item. Another one of those that we had a certain amount in, and then we'd be told to add, let's say like this year, 12%. We'd add 12% of what we have budgeted. This year we drilled down into what we realistically have been spending over the past 5 years and added the 12% to that. Another example of those cuts would be administrative civilian retirement, IMRF, which we trimmed by over $4,000. Our capital request this year is $133,500. It's to replace 4 squad cars at the cost of approximately $27,300 each, plus associated costs in doing this. Our special funds, page 120, is our grant fund. Grant funds must be used within the parameters of each of the individual grants that are awarded. Typically, we receive a minimum of the following grants. JAG grant, which we use for specific equipment purchases that we identify each year. We share this grant with the Sheriff's Department. The Tobacco and Liquor Education and Compliance Grant, the IDOT Traffic Safety Grant, and the Body Armor Replacement Grant. These are the ones we typically see each year. There may be others that come and go in the different years. On the next page, 121, is our donation fund. And we use these funds within the parameters set by those making the donations. Typically, people who make donations have a specific plan or program they want to donate to. The typical donations we receive over the years are throughout the years through the Quincy Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association, from the Police Benevolent Protective Association in conjunction with the Bauer Sisters, who does their fundraising. And we also do fundraising campaigns for programs such as DARE. Page 122, state forfeiture. These funds must be used within the parameters set by law. Generally, forfeiture funds must be used for law enforcement purposes. They may not be used to replace or supplant normal appropriated resources and must increase the entire law enforcement budget, which means we can't use these funds to pay normal costs out of our budget. These have to be above and beyond our budgeted funds by law. This money comes from cash seized and proceeds of the sale of seized property through local and task force cases put together. This year we plan to spend this money on some of our rifles and rifle equipment and handgun lights. Federal forfeiture account. Basically same parameters as the state, except the money comes from cases that are federal cases. That's the only real difference. We don't plan on spending any of this money because after we bought both task force vehicles this year, we got $1 left in that account. Can't even buy a gallon of gas with that. Page 123, Crime Lab. These funds must be used within parameters set by law. Also, generally they must be used for crime lab, crime scene, and evidence processing expenses. These funds come from fees assessed by the court in cases where our crime scene technician tests cannabis evidence. planned expenditures in this year through this fund is training for the crime scene technician and some of the detectives, replacement evidence processing and packaging supplies, and equipment needed for computer forensic work. And the final special fund is on page 126. It's the DUI fund. These funds must be used for enforcement and prevention of DUI purposes, including equipment utilized by patrol officers and their associated that are associated with DUI enforcement. These funds come from fees and reimbursement from public safety responses that are ordered by the court in DUI cases. A big expenditure this year we're planning on making with these funds is the new computers for the squad cars. The ones we're currently using are getting pretty old. They're breaking down. Plus the software that we're running on these computers that we currently have will not be able to be used with the lead system, the state lead system. After, I believe it's June, they will no longer support the XP. So it's time to upgrade these. That's going to be about $65,000, and that will all come out of this DUI fund. Other things we'd be spending out of this fund: replacement breathalyzer supplies and DUI enforcement supplies, and if necessary, replacement in-car camera equipment. This fund, if you remember, we created it, I think, about 3 years ago. Has been great for our vehicle equipment purchases, computers, cameras, things like that. It's really allowed us to take money out of the general fund, our operating budget, and just use it out of these funds rather than increase our operating budget. On the cat trapping, my thought on that would be that we would go out on RFP for someone to contract for trapping the cats. These would be the free roaming cats. I know we've got different areas in town that have issues. The most logical way would be to set a price that we would pay for each animal, for each cat or other domestic animal caught. They would be taken to our shelter, and that's how we would track the number of animals that actually were recovered that we have to pay for. And then we would require the person with the contract to legally dispose of any wild animals they may capture. We would not pay for those. Any other questions, or any questions?
Sure. Chief, you talked about the special funds, and you're about $100,000 more spending out of those funds than previous years. Is the DUI cameras or the computers make up the lion's share of that difference?
Yes, the computers make up the lion's share of that. And then, like I said, we're going to start buying some of the parts we need for our rifles that need to be replaced, and probably a couple of rifles as well through the forfeiture funds.
Have we done that in the past also?
We've not done the rifle parts. Well, one of the things we did with the forfeiture funds in the last 2 years, we had a 2-year plan where we replaced all of our tasers. We did that through the state forfeiture funds. But we've got those all in good shape, and we're in a position now where some of our patrol rifles, and especially the ones we use for training, that get a lot of rounds fired through them, need some either replacement or some repairs, and also new lights and night sights, things like that.
Without taking any those additional funds from those funds, obviously you'd have a significant increase in your budget as compared to last year. Is that a fair statement?
I guess I don't.
About $100,000, a little over $100,000.
In those funds?
Yeah, you're taking.
Yeah, we've got an increase in those funds, and I guess I don't know if this is what you're asking. If we were going to purchase these things without using the special funds, that's how much our regular budget would increase.
Thank you.
So we've got that ability to use the funds.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Chief. Okay, go on to transit. Is Marty on the phone? There he is. Do we have to go over that whole book before you begin your presentation?
Before we get into it all. Transit budget starts on page 127 with our organizational chart. At this time, in transit, I'm the only supervisor, supervising 41 people. I bring these in front of you. The last administration designated me as our oversight manager, which was mandated by the state. These are the 2 guidance folders that I received this week on oversight management, in addition to the transit duties that I have currently. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how much work it is yet. I haven't had enough sleepless nights that I've gotten through all of that yet. So overall, if you go to page 128, the brief summary, you'll see budget is up roughly $300,000 ballpark. The transit department received an additional 10% in state and federal funding this year, which accounts for a good portion of that increase. In order to claim our increase from the state, we have to show that within our budget, that we've accounted for that increase. The largest areas that you'll note, if you look at page 132, let me make sure I'm on the right page here. Correct, page 132, overtime budget. Regular salary and wages has been reduced, the overtime has been increased. 2 reasons for that. When I took over at Transit in 2010, the 2010 budget had an overtime cost of over $140,000. Through working within that area, we added some part-time staff, and as of 2012-2013 budget, I reduced that down to $22,000 in overtime cost. The past approximately 7 months, we have gone down below 7 part-time drivers. At this time, this is reflecting what I would have if I have 5 part-time drivers. In order to do it with 5 part-time drivers, I've had to increase back to the level where we were in 2010 budget, 2010-11 budget. If we hire those, we will probably come in below that if we put those 2 part-time drivers back on.
Marty, why would we not do that?
We are working on it.
Oh, I was going to say.
There's no intention not to. What we've been dealing
Well,
with,
wait a minute, though. If there's no intention not to.
it
Go ahead.
hadn't been
Go ahead.
solidified
Okay.
at time.
All right.
So what we're looking at is the possibility that we will reduce that. We are working towards that goal. We are not up to full 7 staff yet in the part-time area. So
Okay.
But you're interviewing right now.
we are correct. That is, as you'll note in that particular area, the entire area within that only went up by $11,000. So even though we've increased drastically our overtime budget, we've held the line on the bottom line to an $11,000 increase. Where we've added, and this is due in part primarily because of the state and the condition they're in presently. If you look at page 133, line item 3601, fleet maintenance. Yes. Temporary would be, Sherry, if you could help me with that, I believe it's any of our part-time staff members. It's partially the part-time bus drivers, yes. I'm not sure if we classify QU in there or not. We do. So it would be QU, seniors, and part-time staff are included in that portion of the
Alderman Sassen.
budget.
Now, Marty, I understand the sick time buyback. Can you explain to us the personal day pay buyback? Is that basically the same thing? Did they
It
get
is.
personal days?
Since transit does not get holidays, we get 3 holidays a year. We receive Christmas, well, drivers, operators receive Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. They work all other holidays. Those individuals can bank that holiday pay or that holiday time, they can use it as time off in the future, or we do buy back that as part of the contract.
So actually, it's more holiday pay than it is personal days.
Correct. We call it personal days or PTO, paid time off. Yes, sir.
I want to walk you back to the policy, whatever you call it, compliance manual. I'm captivated by that. Do you know the ramifications? I mean, is this more than, for example, what's been done in the past that's never been introduced before? So then the next question is it going to be a level of scrutiny along the lines of what the FAA or IDOT do, and they come in and audit and then demand that you come back to that, or letter correction, all of that?
At this point, it is a new direction. IDOT Transit was audited by the federal FTA, Federal Transit Authority. During that audit last September, they pointed out several glaring issues that IDOT had within their system that did not have oversight. IDOT's response to that was to shove down onto the grantee, the receiver of the grant, which is the city of Quincy, and any other county, city, or functionality that gets the grant money, the mandate to follow through with the oversight. So instead of them taking on the oversight, they've pushed it down on top of us. That oversight at this point, I've been to 2 trainings on it thus far. They are having mandatory trainings. I've spent 4.5 days in mandatory training, and at this point, I've spoken to no less than 10 other transit directors who have been named what they call the PCOM, the oversight manager, and as of yet, none of them fully understand the ramifications. I cannot tell you I understand all of the ramifications. We are going to be scrutinized over this, yes.
Does it treat the entire system the same? Because there's a unique wrinkle. We have the paratransit system, and I think we're the only downstate community that really has a transit system anymore.
It treats all of them
Okay,
equally.
so I thought.
What it amounts to is we are very unique in that we are not only the provider, but we are also the grantee. Which I thought, and I've talked to Dave Spacek, he is the man in charge of IDOT Transit. I explained to him that I felt it was a conflict of interest that I am not only the director of transit, but an employee of the city of Quincy, and now I'm the oversight manager, and he said that that is what they preferred. How it's not a conflict, I really have no idea, but this is the way it's gone. I anticipate considerably more training than what we've gotten thus far. I will get into that in a little bit, but
Marty, I don't mean to interrupt you. Well, I do, but anyway. I'm just sitting here thinking about, first off, how much of the transit budget comes with that IDOT pass-through? It's about like 98% of the budget?
about 92.7% over the last 3
Okay,
years.
so it's definitely a hoop worth jumping through is what
It
you're
is.
saying. Okay, all right.
It is.
The other side of it is more of a personal thing, and feel free to, tell me it's none of my business or you don't want to answer this, but every year it seems you stand up there and we've dumped more stuff on you. And now we've got this compliance issue that seems to parallel the FAA requirements that we're doing at the airport. Can you do it?
It's quickly becoming a very onerous task. Is it possible? I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not trying to
believe
put
it's
you on the
possible.
spot. I mean, there for a while every year, either Alderman Farhar or myself ask every department head, do you have what you need to do your job? I'm asking you, and I know we've got another budgets here for you to look at.
And I will get into that area as well in there. But
Okay.
with this particular budget, I have included in my clerical end a increase in salary with the hope that I can not add a body, but add responsibility and a title to one of my employees. I am hoping to name him a supervisor if he will accept it, and if I get the go ahead from Kyle, which the plan is to try and offload more of what I'm doing onto him. This will remain mine. There's no way I can avoid that.
Okay.
That's just something that is.
And Marty and I have been talking behind the scenes about identifying somebody to step up in a supervisory role because of the fact, he's got 41 individuals just in transit.
Yeah, there comes a time when we really do need to look at what we're doing in transit. The mandates that are coming down now through the state along with this aren't just oversight, but it gets down into minutia, and I was told directly by the gentleman who put this plan together for IDOT that any purchase made with IDOT funding for transit, any purchase has to have a form filled out along with it, down to the point where I asked him about windshield wipers in the dead of winter on a Friday night when I can't get a purchase order, and he said, you need to check with 3 vendors and you need to fill out a form. So on a Friday night at 6 o'clock when the buses come off the street, in order to put them back on the street, I have to have somebody check with 3 vendors to see if I'm getting the cheapest price on a $13 windshield wiper. So it's going to be very onerous. It is.
That answers it. Thank you.
Alderman Holbrook.
Marty, when did you receive all of this?
We got it printed out. It came on a disc form. We got it printed out and put in a binder. I got it put in a binder last Tuesday. Finally, by the time we got it all printed out.
And how long have you been in the training for this?
Started the second week of February. We had a 2-day meeting over in Springfield where they said we're going to be getting you the information. They handed out a PowerPoint at that time, and then they sent us the discs, and here we are. I had an additional 2.5 days at the beginning of this month with this. I'll be honest with you, I've increased travel and training because all of the trainers are coming from Chicago IDOT and at this point coming to Springfield. But to be honest with you, my gut feeling is they're going to get tired of sending people to Springfield and paying for it, and they're going to mandate that we travel to Chicago for the mandatory trainings. I've seen it happen before. I have a feeling it'll go that direction. So I have included more money in my travel and training budget just so I can afford to attend.
And if it gets, in this next year, since this is something new, if this gets to where Marty feels like he's overwhelmed and we need to, make a change, we'll do that. And of course, there's a committee that, transit committee we can take to. And so again, you're voting on a planning document, but that doesn't mean set in stone that we're not willing to change anything. And obviously, since this is a new mandate by the state, we might in 6 months say, hey, this has become pretty labor intensive for Marty. And,
Right, and I guess that's why I wanted to ask you this question now in front of, everybody. You're salaried, correct?
Correct.
Have you been keeping track of your overtime?
I have, sir. Yes.
How much overtime have you worked before this came?
158 hours.
158 hours this year?
Yes.
Is that on a 40-hour week or a 50?
40-hour week.
Okay, that answers.
Alderman Brink.
Marty, this is something we address at the transit committee level.
Correct.
And at some point, when the training is completed, you're going to be required to sign a documentation that we're following all the stipulations of those new regulations.
Correct.
And then the last thing is you have a support staff.
I do.
And you have some pretty senior members, and you're behind the scenes working pretty hard for you.
I have good support staff.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on transit? Move on to central service.
Oh, yeah, if we could.
Yes.
Before you transit, could you give us an update on our current status of our buses?
And that
I know that's
was
something
something I
changed.
thank you for bringing that up. The biggest increase you'll see in this is in our fleet management area, our repairs. I've bumped it over $105,000, and that is on page 133, line 3601, top section. I bumped it $105,000. Our buses are currently 5 years to 6 years of age on our youngest, our newest buses. Up until I attended the training in early April, we were not scheduled to get a single replacement vehicle through 2015. So based upon that, I budgeted what I thought would be appropriate to get us through on repairs. Since that time, I've had a meeting with them outside of the training sessions, and we've been promised 3 new buses by the end of 2014. So while that doesn't alleviate the issue, it does help. Right now we have 1 super medium duty bus, which is the large bus that runs our fixed routes. We have 1 spare. So anytime I have a bus breakdown, I have to put that spare on the road. I have several super medium duty buses in excess of 400,000 miles. We're qualified as of the last audit that we did, the last request that we made. We're qualified for 6 of our 10 frontline buses to be replaced. I've been promised 3. It's my hope that they will come through. I was told point blank, you'll have them before November. So with any luck, we'll get those in. That helps, but it's not going to solve the problem totally.
Assuming the 3 buses come in November, and that's not going to solve your problems, could you maybe explain how you procured new buses, or broken down buses, or the system, how when you have an emergency, how do you go about trying to solve the problem?
We have 1 bus that the state refused to allow us to deadline, as I will call it. That bus did not meet their standards because it only had 113,000 miles on it. The engine blew. It's a $15,000 repair. I have to have that bus repaired next year. I can't leave it sit. They expect me to repair it, so I've included $15,000 as part of that 105. In addition, I've been looking for the better part of 18 months at acquiring buses from other transit agencies. I've been able to acquire 2 buses from Hancock County Mental Health Association. They are the smaller buses. They're used for paratransit services. Both of these buses have in excess of 150,000 miles on them. So it does involve some repair work on those. Those 2 buses have yet to be lettered for Quincy Transit Line, simply because the money was not in this fiscal year to afford that. I've also acquired 2 additional buses from Monmouth, transit agency servicing Monmouth Veterans Home, or Monmouth seniors in that area. So I do have 4 small buses to back up my mainline paratransit buses. I am on hand and still trying to acquire a bus out of Joliet, which is a super medium duty. It does have some repair issues, but I'm told by the maintenance supervisor that it will drive and run to Quincy. So these are all being donated to us. There is no charge on that for us to get. So at the very least, we will have buses we can put on the road, but I can't tell you when I'm going to get the 1 super medium duty. They haven't released it to me yet.
Alderman Sass.
I guess I don't quite understand. The bus system is 98% funded by the feds?
About 93%.
93, so
correct.
all this repair and everything comes out of that 7%?
It comes out of that. No, that repair, any repair we do is part of that money.
92.7.
92.7%.
All the way across the board.
It's all the way across the board. For any expense that we incur, they basically reimburse us to a tune of approximately 92.7%.
So actually, it's their decisions to buy these buses, get them repaired instead of replace them.
We are totally within their control when it comes to the buses, with the exception if we want to go out for bid and spec a bus out to their standards and purchase a super medium duty bus, we can do that. You're looking at probably in the range of $280,000 to $330,000 to purchase a bus spec to their standards.
Alderman Farhoff.
It's not really a question, it's a comment. Everybody always asks, why do we donate buses when, as far as the city, their useful life is exacerbated? The reason we do that is because the feds and the state would prefer us to do that. If we sold those buses, we would get the 7 point whatever it is, and they would get the 93, and that's what they prefer for us to give them
Right.
away.
Their preference is that we give buses to not-for-profit agencies, charitable organizations.
Alderwoman Heineke.
Marty, what's under the capital outlay? What's buildings?
Buildings is under capital. We are still awaiting the possibility, I was promised again in April, that we have a grant for a bus wash system, which would be an automatic bus washing system, a drive-through system that is going to be installed in the old T building, the old transit building being the building on Seminary Road that is used, front part is used for training for police, fire, and transit currently. It was rehabbed by the fire department. The garage area on that is going to be rehabbed and refitted with a drive-through bus wash. We have a real issue with getting our buses washed right now. It's a desperate issue. I have to pull a person off a driving route in order to get my buses cleaned. So this is something that's been promised since 2010. I think maybe Alderman Brink was in the room when we were promised that by IDOT. They have yet to file the application for us. They have yet to send it to us. I talked to Dave Spacek about that, and he was unaware that we had not received the application yet and said that he was going to be personally looking into it. And that was the 3rd of May, or 3rd of April, and it's 10 days from the 3rd of May.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions on transit? So we can go on to central services.
Thank you. Central services. Starts on page 255. This will be the central garage fund. Central garage fund. You'll see we've actually dropped that budget on page 257. In the, I'm sorry, I've got the wrong page. I apologize. Central garage fund actually ends on page 258. I apologize. That budget has actually come down $10,000 for a central garage. We have the central garage, which is our fleet area. Central garage manages all of the fleet operations for the city, all the repair work. They are reimbursed under a revenue side by individual departments for repairs to their vehicles, including transit. Transit does pay into that fund to reimburse central garage. So overall, that fund has dropped. Central Services Fund start on page 259. And I have a summary that I can go through instead of going through line by line. I did not get copies made of it, but I can give you a pretty clear picture of where Central Services Fund is at if you prefer I do that, and then I can take questions. Currently, under the administrative side, we're up $142,000 for salt alone. We have had several light years of winter, with the exception of this year. We've had to increase our salt purchase by $142,000. That is estimating salt at a $70 per ton figure. We do not have that figure. We will not receive that figure from the state off their contracted price until after the budget is passed. So if it comes in at $80, I'm $10 a ton short, which I'm ordering 3,160 ton, I believe is where I put it at. I'm going to be $31,000 short if it goes up $10 a ton. If it goes down $10 a ton, I'm going to have a little left over. So I used a pretty close estimate based on what I was getting from the county engineering department and other areas that purchase salt. They all felt like $70 was probably pretty reasonable. So that's why it's at $142,000. Garbage, total increase in garbage, including trucks, supplies, landfill fees, all the costs related to purchasing 2 trucks, that increased $768,920. Our landfill fee increased $25,000. That was what we projected it at. Again, the contract came in lower than that, so that actually will be able to be reduced somewhat. Recycling, trucks and loan alone, just to pay for the 2 trucks, has an increase of $605,940. The brush contract that we entered has an increase of $26,468. My health insurance for all divisions went up $34,237. Workman's comp for all divisions went up $28,383. MICA insurance for all divisions went up $21,957. Total increase in my budget, based upon just those items I've listed, is $1,627,905. The actual increase in my budget is $1,536,485. So outside of what I would call uncontrollable, because we're looking at $1.5 million in trucks or $1.4 million in trucks, I've reduced my actual physical budget by $100,000 roughly. Everything else has pretty much held the line. That accounts for a reduction of 1 staff supervisor or 1/2 staff supervisor. When Pete retires, his forestry duties will be reassigned. And getting back to Paul's question regarding staffing, Pete is also in charge of building maintenance and barge dock. At this time, we're still in discussions. I've met with Doug today to determine if those duties are going to come to me or where they're going to go. As far as I know at this point, no decision's been made. However, it is just another thing to consider. We have included that in the budget. I'm sorry? Tote service? What page are you looking at so I can... It's income. That's a revenue account. That's projected, yes, what we think we'll produce.
Any additional questions? Sure.
Prior to this order of salt, when was the last time we ordered salt?
I'm sorry?
When was the last time we ordered salt?
We ordered salt. We've ordered salt every year, but we've reduced the salt since prior to my coming on as Director of Central Services. The salt had been being reduced. I talked to Kenny Cantrell, and he had always ordered 3,000 ton every year when he was Director. It was a common habit to have that salt dome full at the start of the year and to be able to refill it at the end of the year, so you knew going in you were going to have your salt for the year. Over the past 10 years, we've averaged right around 3,050 ton of salt a year on use. What we do, Dan, is we contracted this year for 800 ton of salt. That was in order to meet budget that was asked for last year. We had on hand roughly 3,000 ton. So we ended up with 3,960 ton. At the end of the year, you're allowed to purchase an extra 20% or reduce your purchase by 20%. We purchased our additional 20% this year, or 960 tons. So we went into the beginning of the year knowing that we were going to need to purchase salt. When we would go out and burn through trucks, we track it. Virtually every time we've gone out this year, we've put down 250 to 260 ton of salt. when we finish with that, Richie would order salt in an equal amount as to what we use. So we're down to roughly about 600 tons sitting in the dome today, and that's all the salt we have. If you remember, approximately 2011, we had a very light winter, and we had contracted for, I believe, 1,500 ton of salt at that time. Again, that was prior to my arrival here as a director. All of that salt went into storage off-site. So we had a pretty good handful of salt built up. Last year's salt use was fairly light. We again added to that salt pile. Fortunately for us, we were able to get through the winter.
Marty, is it cheaper to go like with liquid chloride or?
Liquid chloride is less expensive. We mix. We do use liquid chloride. We have sprayers on the unit, so they are doing both. They're spraying the salt with the liquid chloride. The problem that I see with liquid chloride, it is a tremendous product. It works very well, but if you pre-treat too soon and you don't get freezing rain or snow or ice, if you end up with more rain, you wash the liquid chloride off the street if you go straight liquid chloride. That's why we do a mix.
Any additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Okay, we'll move on to the fire department. Good evening, Joe.
What's up?
Good evening.
Good evening. We'll start off, the fire department budget begins on page 77 of your budget document. I'll just quickly run through the breakdown, the nuts and bolts of the budget, and then certainly open up to questions. Overall, the fire department budget's up 1.51%, or $133,000 approximately, from the revised budget of last year. And this budget's actually broken down into 6 functional areas. The first one is the 2210, which is the administrative, and in that particular area, our budget's actually down $8,500, or 1.62%, and that's because I had one of the 2 administrators actually gave up his family health insurance coverage, so we just have one that's being funded insurance-wise there for family. Under the civilian area, 2211, we have an increase of $2,021, and the contributing factors there are essentially health insurance, which is up $3,000, and workman's comp, which is up $310. So we had some decreases in other areas to just give us a net increase of $2,021. In suppression, which is our largest area of the fire department budget, we have an overall increase of $129,162, or 1.02%. The contributing factors there are the health insurance for that area is up $76,478. Workman's comp is up $6,694. Pension contribution is up $160,457. And salaries are actually down $135,922. And that's basically because we've budgeted for the attrition of 2 positions from the fire department budget. I will tell you that the impact of that is as we lose a position, it's going to impact our ability to keep all 5 stations open. It's not my intent at this time to simply close a station when the first person retires. What we're going to try to do is maintain the budget as long as we can, and then do something which is called a brownout, which is essentially if manning level dictates on a particular day that we can't keep all 5 stations open, we will close the station for that day, and it would be a day-to-day operation. Certainly not a way we could sustain operations moving forward into a new budget year, but what it allows us to do is keep all 5 stations open as long as we can this year. Okay. The next fund's fire prevention fund, element. It is up $2,000, and that's essentially because of the cost of our International Code Council subscription and books has gone up that much. Then we have training. Training is up $1,245, or 0.8%, and that's entirely made up of the insurance and workman's comp increases. In fact, we had some cuts to keep the increase at $1,245. The last area is maintenance, and that's essentially our building maintenance for the 5 buildings that we actually maintain. That is actually up $7,550, or 13.2%. And the contributing factor for that is essentially the work that we need to continue to do on buildings. I've told you before that when I came in as fire chief 5 years ago now, inherited a situation where we had buildings in significant disrepair, and we've been making strides, slow but sure, to make the improvements needed, and we're continuing to do that. Specifically, this coming budget year, what we're proposing is to do some painting on the exterior of Central Fire Station, as well as doing some soffit replacement and electrical work at Station 3, which is located on 36th Street between Main and State. So those two projects are budgeted to be about $14,000. Again, we made cuts in other areas, so the increase overall in that area is only $7,550. So that's the budget in a nutshell. Probably the big thing of note is the fact that we are budgeting for the attrition of the two positions. As far as the impact and what that's going to go with station closures, there's some parts of this budget that's really kind of hard for me to discuss because we still have to talk about contract, and we'll get into that with your indulgence when we go into executive session, but I can't really speak to some of that now.
Alderman Havermill.
Joe,
Yes,
Chief Henning, I get every year it seems like when we're talking about this budget, we kind of talk about a station potentially closing, or if we make significant cuts, it'll close. I mean, I guess, are we at a point now where we just need to bite the bullet and close one? I mean, wouldn't that take the pressure off?
I think we're getting there, but what I would like to see, and I've been discussing with the administration, is I think we need to do it in the proper fashion. I think there's ways that we can do this and minimize the impact to the public. That's what we're working towards trying to do. Been doing a lot of research and working with other agencies to come up with that information, and my plan would be to be able to come with you in a plan in the next fiscal year to basically outline how that could possibly be done.
Some consolidation perhaps, or re-changing positions and things like that?
Yeah, perhaps. Again, a lot of that's actually covered in the contract talk we're going to talk about a little
Right.
bit later.
What-
But I can see the writing on the wall and know where
Yeah.
we're going, and we're trying to get there.
Well, I mean, we have the same discussion every year.
Absolutely.
And what's the least utilized station right now?
In terms of number of responses, Station 6 at 24th and Cedar.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Brink.
Chief, these expected retirements, would that be in the first quarter, second quarter, or?
I have one that's confirmed he's leaving May 2nd, so I'm going to have one right out the gate. The other one, it's hit and miss. He's been claiming he's going to retire for a year, so we will see. I would anticipate he's going to retire. I just can't tell you when for sure.
So how many brown-out days would you suspect you have in this year?
Where we're at right now, and again,
It's contingent upon.
yeah, I got to be
It's more of a
careful.
conversation to have in the executive session.
It's not that I'm trying to dodge a bullet, but I'm trying to. Can we talk about that, or if we come out of executive session, we can talk about it further. But I will tell you this: as it stands right now, with the hope of the two people retiring, I'm $107,000 short of making payroll at the end of the year if those people don't go. So that'll give you some idea of where we're at budgetarily.